You meet someone, and within the first 3 conversations, you've already written the rest of the story. You don't see who they are right now, the person sitting in front of you who's emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or still figuring out their life. You see who they could be in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years if they just got their act together. You're dating a project, a fixer-upper, a rough draft of a person you've convinced yourself is one breakthrough away from being exactly what you need. And here's the trap. You've fallen completely in love with someone who doesn't exist yet. So you make excuses. You defend behavior that doesn't match the beautiful, fully realized version of them you've built in your head. You say things like, they're just going through a lot right now. Or once they heal from their ex, they'll be ready. Or I can see the real them underneath all this. And you're exhausted because you're not in a relationship with a person. You're in a relationship with potential. Here's the thing. This isn't you being a hopeless romantic. This isn't you being patient or understanding or overly forgiving. This is your brain choosing a safe fantasy over a risky reality. And once you understand why, everything changes. Let's talk about what your brain is actually doing. Your brain is a prediction machine. That's its primary job. It constantly runs simulations, forecasting what's going to happen next so you can navigate the world without getting blindsided. When you meet someone new, someone with potential, your brain doesn't just see them, it runs a mental simulation. It projects forward. It imagines the perfect relationship, the deep conversations, the emotional intimacy, the version of them that's healed, available, and ready. And that simulation, that feels real. Your brain releases dopamine based on the prediction of reward, not just the reward itself. So when you imagine this person becoming everything you need, your brain treats that fantasy like it's already happening. You aren't in love with the person sitting across from you. You're in love with the simulation. And here's where it gets tricky. When the real person does something that doesn't match your mental model, when they cancel plans, emotionally withdraw, or show you they're not ready, you experience what psychologists call prediction error. Prediction error is the psychological discomfort your brain feels when reality doesn't match expectation. And instead of updating your mental model to reflect who this person actually is, you do something else. You try to force them back into the fantasy. You double down. You give them another chance. You explain away the behavior. You tell yourself that wasn't the real them. The real them is the version I know is in there. But here's the truth. The version in your head, that's not them. That's a story you're telling yourself to avoid the disappointment of who they actually are right now. So why does your brain do this? Why does it cling so hard to the fantasy? Because falling in love with potential is incredibly safe. There's a concept called idealization paralysis. It's when you have such a perfect, Pinterest-worthy vision of what love should look like that no real, flawed human being could ever compete. You've built this impossibly high standard, not just for the person, but for the relationship itself. It has to be effortless. It has to be transformative. It has to look like the montage in a movie where 2 people heal each other and grow together and become the best versions of themselves. And a real person with their own baggage, their own pace, their own limitations, they can't meet that standard. Not yet. Maybe not ever. So you stay in the what if, you stay in the potential, because as long as the relationship is almost perfect, you never have to face the disappointment of it being just ordinary, or worse, wrong for you. But here's the deeper piece. This isn't just about standards. It's about safety. If you've been hurt before, if you've experienced abandonment, betrayal, or emotional neglect, your nervous system has learned a very specific survival tactic. Don't get too close to something real, because real things can hurt you. Real intimacy is vulnerable. Real love is unpredictable. You can't control it. You can't script it. You can't guarantee the outcome. But a fantasy can't abandon you. A fantasy doesn't require you to show up fully. A fantasy doesn't demand that you let someone actually see you, flaws and all. Falling in love with potential keeps you at a safe distance. You're emotionally invested, but you're not actually in it. You're in the waiting room. You're in the someday. You're in the when they're ready. And there's a term for this protective instinct. Dr. Brené Brown calls it foreboding joy. It's when you can't fully let yourself experience happiness because you're bracing for the inevitable loss. You subconsciously keep the relationship in the potential phase because if it never fully becomes real, it can never fully fail. You're protecting yourself from heartbreak by never actually letting your heart fully break open. But here's the cost. Loving someone's potential is exhausting. You are spending all your emotional energy trying to drag someone across a finish line they never signed up to cross. You're managing their emotions. You're interpreting their behavior in the most generous light possible. You're doing the emotional labor of two people while they remain half in, half out. And the whole time you're telling yourself, if I just love them enough, if I just show them what we could be, they'll finally step up. But they won't, because they're not fighting for a fantasy. They're just living their actual life. You're essentially trying to have a relationship with a ghost. You're in love with a version of someone who might never arrive. And while you're waiting for them to become that person, you're not actually building anything real. You're just waiting. So how do you stop? You start by doing the hardest thing, grieving the fantasy. You have to let go of the perfect relationship you built in your head. You have to let go of the version of them you were so sure was coming. You have to accept that who they are right now is who they actually are, not who they could be, not who they would be if they healed or grew or finally got their life together. Right now, today, this is them. And then you ask yourself one devastatingly simple question. If this person never changed a single thing about themselves, would I still want to be here? Not in 6 months, not after they go to therapy, not after they figure things out. Right now, as they are, fully, completely, would you still choose this? If the answer is no, if you're only here for the potential, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a waiting room, and waiting rooms aren't meant to be lived in. You deserve someone who is ready to be loved today, not someone who requires assembly, not someone you have to fix, convince, or drag into emotional availability. You deserve a person, not a project. And I know that's terrifying, because letting go of the potential means facing the reality. And the reality might be that this person isn't right for you, not because they're bad, but because they're not ready, or because what they want doesn't match what you need, or because the version of them you fell in love with simply doesn't exist outside your imagination. But here's the truth. As long as you're holding on to the ghost, you can't make room for something real. If this video called you out, if you recognized yourself in the pattern of falling for potential instead of reality, leave a comment. Tell me, what's the fantasy you're holding on to that you know, deep down, you need to let go of? And if you're tired of waiting for someone to become who you need them to be, hit subscribe. We're here every week explaining the psychology behind the patterns you thought were just bad luck. You're not broken for wanting to believe in people, but you're allowed to stop waiting for them to believe in themselves. It's okay to let go of the potential and finally see what's real.